"Yes," Clarrie sighed, recalling the other girl she'd once tried to help, but who'd ended up in cahoots with Green. "I made a mistake taking her on all those years ago, but I thought I was doing something good, taking on a child from an orphanage, and look how she repaid us."
"Perhaps that was part of the trouble. Never having had anyone to truly love her, when that devil started showing her affection, she fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He manipulated her, and she let him drag her down with him."
Clarrie shook her head slowly.
"Oh, Nana, what a wise old owl you are. But our dear Meg was orphaned so tragically, and she never behaved like that,"
she said, the contentment returning to her face.
"She lost her family and her home, and came to us because she had nowhere else to go. She might have been in pain and looking for someone to blame, but she was always polite and dignified, and now she's part of the family, just like you, Nana May."
The old nanny smiled sagely and turned away to go back to her mending. Yes, Meg Chandler was one of the family now. But just as she felt Esme Carter had always had a nasty streak in her, even before she came under Green's influence, Nana May felt as if Meg was waiting for something. Always had been. The girl had lost the family farm because she'd been too young to take over the tenancy after her parents had died, and she'd gradually come to realise that the Stratfield Whites were good, kind people. But look how, with her farming expertise, Meg had turned the small country estate round when things had been tight. For someone so young, she had a very mature head on her shoulders. Nana May had been there when the child had arrived at Robin Hill House, declaring that she wasn't coming as a guest, as Clarrie had wished. No, she wanted to be a servant. All she wanted was a roof over her head. She didn't even want any wages, although Clarrie had insisted on paying her. She wanted to be independent of the allowance she was to receive until she came of age, by way of insurance compensation from the accident. Instead, she wanted that money invested, together with the proceeds from everything that her parents had owned at the farm. Even at the tender age of 16, she'd had her head screwed on tightly. Had Clarrie forgotten that day? Nana May hadn't. She knew Clarrie wanted Meg to stay at Robin Hill House forever, and the fact that Meg had clearly fallen in love with Ralph, head gardener, now that his father had gone into semi-retirement, and that Ralph worshipped her in return, could mean that Clarrie's wish would come true. Clarrie tried to conceal it, but Nana May knew that her mistress loved Meg, and the wise old lady knew why. But who knew what the future held for any of them? Adolf Hitler had taken Austria for himself the previous year, and later part of Czechoslovakia. And now in March of this year he'd marched into Prague and annexed the remainder of the mineral-rich country, in defiance of the Munich Agreement. British Prime Minister Chamberlain had warned Germany against its policy of domination by force, and almost in reply, Germany's ally, Italy, had invaded and overcome Albania. At last, the British government had started to believe what that warmonger Winston Churchill had been saying for years was true, that Hitler was highly dangerous and not to be trusted to keep to any past agreements. The government had even passed the Military Training Act, by which all single men aged between 20 and 22 were liable to be called up to a 6-month military training course, after which they would be discharged into an active reserve. Ralph and the estate's maintenance man, Bob, were just too old to qualify. But who knew what would happen in the future? Wigmore had been in negotiation with Mr. Churchill for some time, and was now engaged in manufacturing shell cases at the vast engineering works in East London, just as he had in the Great War. It was going to happen all over again, wasn't it? As ever, Nana May kept her own counsel as she went back to her chair and lowered herself into it. If she were honest with herself, she secretly loved Meg as the grandchild she'd never had.